ton of you reached out via email and LinkedIn after our last video about how to hire the best technical talent. Just asking follow-up questions around how do I also build a framework for figuring out who the best co-founders to bring on board would be. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're gonna dive on right in. Hi everyone, my name is Shuo Chen. I am a former founder, now investing in founders and teaching founders at both Berkeley and Stanford. As an investor, I've invested in over 100 pre-seed and seed stage startups. Now about a dozen of them have gone public and have gotten acquisitions from Fortune 50 companies. Another dozen of them are now unicorns. And I've learned a ton from working with both our portfolio companies as an investor, but also as a faculty member who's taught now many students who have gone on to become very successful founders. And I want to leverage all of these personal and professional experiences to share with you some of the best practices I've seen from founders who have had a really effective method for figuring out whether or not they're compatible with a potential co-founder they're exploring. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. What I didn't get to mention is I'm also a board member here at DECODE, the largest founder community that's co-hosted across Berkeley and Stanford. We just held our annual conference, and we're going to be posting our conference-related videos from all the sessions that we did with incredible founders, investors, and operators from that conference, including speakers like OpenAI's Chief Product Officer, the co-founder of Lightspeed, as well as a ton of founders. So we're going to be sharing that in the hyperlink down below. But without further ado, I want to come back to our main topic for this week, which is all around how do you effectively test for co-founder compatibility. So let's dive on right into our top 3 tactics to help you effectively identify whether or not you have a compatible co-founder. So first tactic that I want to cover for today is that there are 5 characteristics to really optimize for when you're testing for co-founder compatibility. And these 5 characteristics to prioritize for are speed, clarity, ownership, curiosity, and openness. So this tactic 1 is all around how do you prioritize for these 5 characteristics. I want to give you some very specific questions that you can ask to your co-founder to figure out whether or not they're compatible. So first, on speed, does this individual or multiple individuals you're considering, do they move fast or do they get stuck in analysis paralysis? In fact, this is a good question for you to test yourself as well to figure out, well, what are the things that I am particularly good at versus what are the things that I am not particularly good at, so that you can find a co-founder who is compatible to you, as in they're good at the things that you're not good at and they are complementary to you. So the first one is all around speed. Second one is around clarity. Can they explain complex ideas simply? If they can't really help you effectively understand their thinking, how can they explain it effectively to customers or investors, right? So you want to make sure that they're clear. 3, ownership. Do they take responsibility when things go sideways, or do they try to play the blame game? And of course, spoiler alert, things always go sideways in the startup world. Things are always chaotic. You're constantly iterating and learning along the way. So you want to make sure to find a co-founder who can effectively take ownership and adapt quickly. 4, curiosity. Are they asking the right questions and really digging deeper, or are they just nodding along? Generally speaking, curious people are really finding solutions and possibly even identifying problems that others are missing. So you want to find a co-founder who's deeply curious. And hopefully this curiosity is just genuine to who they are so that they naturally grow along the way. Last characteristic is openness. Do they hear your feedback and seriously consider it, or do they dismiss, anything that anybody else suggests and act offensive when they hear it? So all of these 5 characteristics are important to really finding a co-founder who's not only compatible with you, but also has complementary skill sets to you. So if you are very clear, but not fast in speed, then perhaps you want to find a co-founder who is fast in speed, but perhaps is not as clear as you are, so you can complement each other. At the same time, you want to also make sure that you're compatible in that you value each other's weakness/strengths, so that you don't think the other person is silly for not being a good at one specific area, but you say, actually, I value the strength that you have so much that even in this area that you're not as good at, hey, this is where I shine, I step in, I take responsibility, but that I would love to have you take ownership of these other areas. So it's a careful balance to strike where you want to make sure you're aligned on the fact that you agree that all of these characteristics are important, of course, and that you're compatible on how you're thinking about solving problems when you're stuck in one, but you want to make sure that you're also complementary to each other. So keep in mind that in these really early stages, it's not just you who's evaluating whether or not this other co-founder is compatible. You're actually evaluating each other very early on. And really, ideally, how you start the conversation is, hey, I want to make sure that this is a two-sided evaluation. So anybody can walk away at any time with no hard feelings, no drama, no challenges. This is just a fair two-sided conversation to figure out whether or not there's a good fit. So all of this is around tactic 1, which is to help you prioritize for speed, clarity, ownership, curiosity, and openness in your potential co-founder. And of course, there are way more characteristics that we can talk about to say, hey, these are characteristics that are even more important or that we should really emphasize on. But if you're starting with these 5, you're going to be in a good place, especially because startups, you need to be absolutely fast and iterate quickly because that's startup life. Otherwise, you might as well be working at a much larger platform and join a larger company. And of course, someone within the team has to be clear because you want to be able to communicate effectively. And of course, because of the size of the startup, ownership is super important so that everybody has clear responsibilities, and curiosity helps you continue to grow in the long run, and openness allow you to actually be able to chat with each other. So we did talk about complementary skills earlier, but there are certain pieces of these things where you want at least the basics of this to exist. So when I talked about complementary, I just want to add this as one more point of clarification. It doesn't mean that someone is not open, but perhaps that they're not as good as openly sharing their feedback, but that if one person on the team, one of the co-founders, is really good at it, they can help initiate the conversation and then the other side responds. So I just want to make sure that when you heard me talking about complementary skill sets earlier, it wasn't in the context of you didn't need to have this characteristic at all. It's just that perhaps one of the co-founders really shine very strongly in one area. So all of that was tactic 1 earlier, so let's move on to tactic 2, which is if you're testing for co-founder compatibility, the best thing you can do after you've done just initial screening to make sure they have complementary skill sets with you is this tactic 2, which is collaborate on a trial project. That is just the best way to test whether or not this co-founder is potentially compatible with you. The best way is to just literally work together. You want to generally choose a project that both uses every co-founder's abilities, all of the skills that we talked about earlier, plus whatever functional capabilities you need them to have, whether it's coding or sales and whatnot. But also too, ideally this is a project that also has a real impact to the actual business idea that you guys are working on. So you want to do a couple of things, like you want to find something that perhaps all of you, whether it's you and your co-founder or multiple co-founders, that just bugs you. It's a problem that you've been trying to solve it for a while, just to see if you approach problems similarly. Or if you just agree that, the goal of working on this project together is to see how you communicate and divide tasks and just handle real challenges that you might come across. Some examples of potential projects that you can collaborate on include you can try to design and validate a specific feature if you have already built an initial product and you're evaluating a potential co-founder to see if they can join and add more to the team. Or alternatively, if you don't necessarily need to add any more features at this particular stage, you could also research and recommend a go-to-strategy market for one particular customer segment together, so you actually test working on the business case of it together. Or let's say you're even earlier in the process and you haven't started to build a product and you're not yet ready to explore go-to-market yet, you could just collaborate on building a very small tool or process that your actual team needs to use internally to succeed. So the goal is to have one very clearly defined project that uses every co-founder's ability and has a real impact to the actual business idea to just help you test working together. And in this approach, there are kind of 2 main things that you can test out. You can run this project either as a sprint or as a marathon. So the sprint approach is if you're working together on a trial project that you can finish in just, let's say, 1 to 4 weeks max. So this is a sprint that's under a month. This is generally quick and clean. You'll know pretty fast if you click and work together well. Alternatively, you can also try the marathon approach, which is you start working together more casually over a few months. Well, the upside to a longer project together is that you get a real feel for the partnership. You understand each other more deeply. You have longer opportunity to actually test how you resolve problems together and conflict with each other. But of course, the downside is you might invest longer time and more months only to discover that you're not quite compatible and you end up walking away not working with each other. So there are pros and cons to each of these approaches. So my general recommendation is that you start with a sprint that can expand into a marathon, but then generally speaking, all of these trial projects should last under a year, at which point in time you should agree on what the trigger points are. For example, you've run the sprint that has gone really well and you haven't figured out and really assess fully whether or not this is a right fit, so you both agree to then expand into the marathon approach. Then you've run the marathon successfully, and then you sit down and say, all right, let's now look at the criteria to decide whether or not we should work together. We've already now gone through the sprint and then the marathon, so based on our previous criteria, do we meet the criteria for whether or not we work together? After you've done these trial projects with each other, you want to make sure that you have the right milestones to make sure that you actually convert that into a real partnership together. And during this whole process, there's maybe two principles to keep in mind. First of all, generally in these trial projects, nobody gets paid. You're not hiring each other or paying for each other's time because you're equally assessing whether or not you're the right fit together. You're both just figuring out whether or not you want to work together at all. So generally speaking, no one gets paid. The second principle in all of this is because you're building a real thing together, you want to have the IP or intellectual property conversation up front. So if you're building code or designs or ideas or anything else, you want to make sure you decide who owns what you build during this trial project. And generally speaking, there are kind of two options to approach as it relates to intellectual property in a trial project. Option one is that the company owns everything. And this is one of the most common paths I see startups take, where any work that is done during this trial belongs to the company entity. And if these co-founders end up working together and joining as co-founders, great. They all get equity in the company that owns their work already. And if you decide to not join forces, then whoever actually owns the company or continues to run the company keeps the work, and then the other co-founder just walks away pretty clean. Of course, this is option one where the company keeps the IP, but there's also option two where everybody keeps their own IP until they decide whether or not to join. This second option is less common, but is possible if it's not clear that one co-founder is further along than the other person, for example, where everybody owns what they created during the trial process, and this protects, of course, every single individual in this process, but then in the long run could create issues if you have co-founders that don't end up joining after creating IP that is actually core to what one of the co-founders decides to work on full-time. So there are more challenges and issues to overcome with option two, but is a great option to pursue if every co-founder is starting with a similar starting point, as opposed to option one makes more sense when one co-founder is further along. So all of this is to help you think about option or tactic two to test for co-founder compatibility, which is you test it effectively by collaborating on a trial project together that just uses every co-founder's ability and works on something with real impact to the actual business idea. Whether you do a sprint or a marathon or a sprint that turns into a marathon, you want to make sure that you chat through the fact that nobody gets paid and how to divvy up intellectual property before you dive into these actual trial projects. So after you effectively collaborate on a trial project together, then this is where tactic 3 becomes super relevant when you're talking about testing for co-founder compatibility. This is where you want to discuss equity expectations early on. You want to make sure whether or not you're directionally aligned early by just discussing equity at a high level, even if we don't have any exact numbers at these early stages. And there are generally kind of two camps of thought on how co-founders should split equity. One camp of thought is the equal partnership camp, where people prefer it when everybody has equal skin in the game and everybody feels equally valued and motivated. The other camp of thought is kind of that one person is a clear tiebreaker, where someone needs to be the tiebreaker, where one person has slightly more equity to have clear decision-making power. Now, whichever camp of thought you're in, I think it's important that you have this conversation up front to figure out which group you feel more aligned to, what group your potential co-founder feels more aligned to, so at least you know as you're in the early stages of working together whether or not this is going to be an issue. And of course, if one co-founder is bringing a lot more to the table than the other person, and I'm talking about long run value add, not just in the immediate or in terms of past experiences, but I'm talking about their future contributions. This is where you want to make sure that you think about splitting things unequally because they just add a lot more value than the other person does. So with that in mind, as you're discussing equity expectations early on in Tactic 3, you want to make sure to figure out if you're camp equal partnership or if you're camp one person is tiebreaker. Whether this person is slightly more or substantially more, you want to decide based on how much to the table each co-founder is bringing. So with that, we've talked about the top 3 tactics to help you test for co-founder compatibility. Tactic 1 being you want to prioritize for speed, clarity, ownership, curiosity, and openness in a co-founder. Tactic 2 being that you want to collaborate on a trial project together to see if you work well together. And Tactic 3 being that you want to discuss equity expectations upfront so you make sure whether or not your potential co-founder is actually compatible with you or not. With that, if you have any other follow-up questions, please feel free to leave a comment for us down below or follow up by email or LinkedIn so we can answer your questions in a future video. Of course, we have also covered more traps to avoid as well as tools that you can leverage in this process to test for co-founder compatibility. We'll hyperlink the whole newsletter down below if you're interested in learning more. And with that, thanks so much for tuning in. If you found today's session helpful, please don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, feel free to share this video with other friends and founders in the community. Thanks so much, and we'll see you at next week's session. Take care. Bye.